Welcome to the Leader to Leader podcast. I'm your host, Susan Spears. Our guest today is Lloyd Harrison, the CEO of Virginia Partners Bank, located here in the Fredericksburg, Virginia region and a little beyond, I think.
Correct. We've got presence in Reston in Northern Virginia, as well as in Annapolis and in La Plata in Charles County.
Yeah, so Lloyd, I'm excited to have you here with us today, and I thank you for joining us. And for folks that are listening from all over the world, you just heard a lot about kind of our Northern Virginia area here, just beneath Washington, D.C., and in the great state of Virginia, which Lloyd has deep roots in Virginia. I want to tell you a little bit about his background. He went to the University of Virginia, where he received his Bachelor of Arts, and went to William & Mary, where he got his MBA. Both great institutions, well known in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I'm sure that you're a big fan of both schools to this day, right?
Absolutely.
You're one of those. We could do the whole show about that.
Football after Thanksgiving is usually tough, though, I have to admit.
Yeah, it's a lot there, and he's had a lengthy career in banking, and has been president and CEO of Calvert Bank and Trust, president and CEO of Mercantile Southern Maryland Bank, all prior to founding with two of his colleagues, Wally King and Bill Young, the Virginia Partners Bank. And there's quite a story there that we'll get into in a little bit. And Lloyd's also been involved in a lot of different ways with the community, involved with different organizations. So we may touch on that too. But I want to dive in, Lloyd, and talk about, let's start with your leadership journey.
Sure. I think we'll start with early in my career as a banker. It was on a flight to Chicago on business, and I was with traveling with my boss at the time, Bill Young, the man you mentioned.
Yes.
He was really the prime motivator for what is Virginia Partners Bank today. So at any rate, we were flying to Chicago on business, and you're having a conversation, and this was probably 1987, 1988, thereabouts. Mm-hmm. And I had been very fortunate in getting into banking. I'd worked in Philadelphia for Dun & Bradstreet between undergrad and graduate school, and in that job, I got to know an awful lot of different businesses. And it was amazing to me how many businesses it takes to make the world go round.
Oh, yes.
And it intrigued me. And having been an English major and an undergraduate, it was like, I really need to understand what this is all about. So I was very fortunate to be able to go back and get my MBA degree. And when I got into banking and started in the early summer of 1983, within weeks it just clicked. This is fun. It's fascinating.
Oh, wow.
And from there, I really knew that I wanted to make a career. So at any rate, on that flight, Bill asked me what I wanted to do, where do you want to be at some point, and I said, I want to run a bank. Simple as that.
1983.
But that was probably 1987.
That's right.
On the business flight.
That's right.
I've been in the business for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
So that was the idea of having a leadership role in banking happened early in my career, and I took a track that had me focused in the commercial banking side of things, credit, risk management, and had leadership roles in that. Was the chief lending officer at the old National Bank of Fredericksburg.
Yes.
And they were acquired by Mercantile Bank Shares out of Baltimore. And it was through that affiliation in 2001 that I was tapped to become CEO of Calvert Bank and Trust.
Okay.
Their CEO over there was retiring, and there was a management succession void, and so the holding company asked me to go over there and run the bank. So in 2001, I went over there. It was my first CEO gig. And quite honestly, the first 18 months, 2 years was kind of high-stress panic because I needed to learn everything there was about the business of banking. I knew the credit side, lending
Right.
pretty darn well. But there's a whole host of other things. I mean, how's a branch open in the morning? And what about deposit ops and loan ops and on it goes. The regulatory environment, banking is a very heavily regulated industry. So for the next 18 months, 2 years, I just was eyeball deep in trying to make sure I understood everything there was to know about the business of running a bank. And then in the 2004, 2005 timeframe, Mercantile embarked upon a consolidation exercise to reduce the number of separately chartered banks from around 20 to about a dozen or so. And where I was over in Southern Maryland, there were 3 Mercantile affiliates, Calvert Bank and Trust, First National Bank of St. Mary's, and Bank of Southern Maryland. Those 3 charters were collapsed into one, Calvert Bank, and I was the successor CEO for all 3, and it was about, at that point, it was about a $1.1 billion bank, 17 branches serving the 3-county Southern Maryland area. And so, that goes along until the fall of 2006, Columbus Day on 2006, that the acquisition of Mercantile by PNC was announced. So that gets everyone to thinking, well, gosh, what's next? Last I checked, PNC had a CEO, so that's clearly not the job I'm going to get coming out of this. That was that act or that event, the acquisition of Mercantile by PNC, created the opportunity for Virginia Partners Bank. And as I said before, Bill Young was really the mastermind behind all of that, and worked behind the scenes to lay a good foundation for bringing together the team that would ultimately found and run Virginia Partners Bank, including myself and Wally King, and a number of people who had been directors of National Bank of Fredericksburg. And so that brings us then to the spring of 2007, where Bill and I resign our positions at PNC and begin the process, the de novo process with the former Virginia Partners Bank. Wally King joins us that summer, and from May of 2007 through August of 2008, we're working on getting the approval process. We open for business. And some of you will remember that somewhere between May of 2007 and August of 2008, there was this thing called the Great Recession that started.
Oh, yes.
And if you really want to have fun, start a bank at the beginning of a Great Recession. And there's actually, that's not said sarcastically. So because of the charter that we chose as a state member bank, which means you have a state charter and you're a member of the Federal Reserve, we needed to raise our capital before we could submit our regulatory applications. Right around Labor Day of 2007, we began our capital raise. And in 2 months, we raised a little over $21 million. By Virginia statute, that $21 million had to be invested in U.S. Treasuries. And that's where it's sitting when the Great Recession starts to take hold. You could have been in no better an investment than in U.S. Treasuries. We raised the money at the height of the stock market. Got lucky on 2 important counts. So, honestly, it's sometimes better to be lucky than good. So August of 2008, we opened for business. We know things are not really going in the right direction. The existing banks are starting to be inwardly focused because there's asset quality issues, and that created an even better opportunity for us. We're brand new. We're hungry for loans. We know we need to be cautious when it comes to credit, so we can now pay attention to the customers that are being ignored by the banks. And so we brought in lots and lots of customers because of that. So, the timing turned out to be remarkable. there is something to be said for starting a bank at the beginning of a great recession. There's lots of opportunity. Let me make one observation, though. So there's between 2001 and 2007, that's a few years, not that many years. Mm-hmm. But for me personally, there was an interesting transformation that takes place. If in 2001 you had said to me, how about starting a bank?
Right.
I'd have said, I don't know anything about that one.
Yeah, you're on the front end of figuring this thing out.
And then when in 2007 we're having the conversation, well, what about starting a bank? It's like, oh yeah, I can do that. It was just that, having been a student of the industry for so many years and then being in a leadership role for, 5-6 years at that point, it was an easy decision. So one of the interesting things in life is that sometimes the most momentous decisions are surprisingly easy to make.
That is true, and that's really, sometimes those simple statements like that are profound. I think about you discussing those first 2 years there and what that time must have been like for you. It sounded like it was a little bit scary in 2001, 2002, and 2003 as you were learning it all, but yet I bet it was invigorating too.
It is. You're
just all in.
You're completely consumed by it, in a good way. You're excited to go to work, and you've got lots of energy and ideas, and there's an awful lot that you need to digest and understand in that process. Probably you think that you may take some things a little bit more seriously than you should. For example, a hurricane came up the bay and did a fair amount of damage in southern Maryland, and one of my branches over in Chesapeake Beach was flooded. The parking lot was flooding, and so the building now has water in it. And my wife and I were scheduled to fly out for a summer vacation, end of summer vacation, and I just couldn't go.
Right.
I need to stay. Well, what am I going to do? Believe me, I was not the guy who dried the carpets in there, but you just felt I needed to be there.
Right.
So you're all in at that point.
You're all in. I can relate to it, Lloyd, in 2010 when I was first acting president and then president here at the Chamber in my little nonprofit world in comparison. I remember those first couple of years, all I did was work, but I wanted to. And I was learning every inch of this nonprofit association industry that's my lifeblood over here, And I think you have to have that passion for it. Because right at the beginning when you said you got the bug, I guess in 83, and you said the words, it was fun. And everything that I've been really successful at along my journey, even though it may look hard or difficult from the outside, I was having fun.
Yeah.
It hit whatever that was fun, and for you that happened. What do you think that was on the banking side that made you go, wow, I really like this. This is fun.
So I think it's several things. There's a mix of what you're involved in. Clearly on the credit, the commercial banking lending side of things, there's an analytical component. And I picked up those skills in MBA school. But there's also a great deal of customer interaction. So you've got people skills. You're out there. So you're not doing the same thing every day.
Yes.
And when you drive up and down Route 3 or walk around downtown, if you really start thinking for a minute about all the different businesses that you have walked by or driven past, just try counting them for 60 seconds as you're driving along Route 3.
Yeah, right.
And you're going to run out of fingers.
Right.
There are that many of them. And there are people behind every single one of those.
They all have their story.
And that's what makes the worlds go round. And so when I was working for Dun & Bradstreet in Philadelphia, I first got exposed to the mass depth and breadth of the business world. And then in the business of banking, lending money to those enables them to succeed and prosper and grow. And the multiplier effect of all of that, that they hire more people, they invest capital, it creates its own multiplier effect within the local economy, and then that spreads out even more broadly. And so at this time of year, it's apropos to think of It's a Wonderful Life,
yeah.
where there's that scene when there's going to be a run on the bank, and Jimmy Stewart's character starts describing how he doesn't have everybody's money there in the vault. Well, it's in so and so's house, and
yes.
that really literally is the way the world goes round in the business of community banking. We put people taking your deposits, and we're helping somebody build a house, send their kids to school, open a new business, add to a business, hire people, invest in real estate, invest in machinery and equipment, all of those things. And I realized early on that what I was doing was consequential at some level.
Yes.
And so that was, that's the thrill. Man, I've done something today. It's kind of like cutting the grass. You look behind and go, wow, that looks great. Well, a little bit longer gratification than that, but still, you get to see that you're making a difference. What you do on a daily basis, it makes a difference. So it's exciting, it's fun. There's the mix of different activities, mental and social and so forth and so on. So it was just like I said, I knew I'd found my niche.
You can hear it in your voice as you talk about this. I can tell you have a great passion for this.
Yes.
It's awesome. And, saying you make a difference and love for the business community, we're at one on that one for sure.
Right.
And knowing that you impact lives is just a great thing. Who has impacted your life? Has there been a mentor or somebody that's had a tremendous impact on you? I know you mentioned Bill Young, and maybe that's the answer, or maybe it's somebody else.
So let me answer that from looking through the telescope in a different
Sure.
way. Mm-hmm. Yes, there have been mentors. Bill certainly is one. There are two people, though, who made a single declarative sentence. And they were separated in time by 18 years. But I remember each of them, and I have never forgotten to follow them. So the first was a guy named Mike Elliott, who ran the credit department at the old First National Bank of Maryland, headquartered in Baltimore. And so that's where I and about 23 of my colleagues fresh out of schools were in the training program, the formal training program to learn to be commercial bankers.
Yeah.
And as a bunch of young 20-somethings, there was a little bit of shenanigans, raucous behavior, and chatting, and all that kind of stuff. So a few weeks into our careers, Mike brings us all into the conference room, and he gives us a lecture. And it was basically like, you're in the business world, you need to act like. But he used the phrase that we needed to approach our jobs with concentrated effort.
Okay.
And I'm sure I could tell by the looks on faces, some people were thinking that they were being, chewed out. And but I'm listening to Mike, and when I hear him say that you need to have a concentrated effort to approach your business, your job with a concentrated effort, I remember that, and I understood exactly what he meant. Never forgot it. I ran into, so, I'm out of the credit training program, and years go by. I haven't seen Mike for decades, and I ran into him 3 years ago in Baltimore. And I went up to him. He remembered me. And I said, Mike, I want to tell you something that you said that has stayed with me forever. And I told him, and he goes, oh, yeah, I gave that speech every year. So clearly, my class of the credit analyst was not the only one who misbehaved, and it he knew he needed to give each group a little bit of a kick in the pants to get them going in the right direction. But I never forgot that concept of concentrated effort.
And that's really great that you had an opportunity to let him know that it yes. mattered.
Yeah. And then the other statement made by a gentleman named Dana Jones, who was executive director of the Southern Maryland Tri-County Council, Community Action Council. He was a director at Calvert Bank. So we were having an all-employees annual meeting. It's the first one, and it's the fall of 2001, so I'm pretty new in the position.
Yep.
And I'd asked Dana to make some remarks, and so he gets up there, and he is making some of his remarks, and I'm listening to him. And he makes the following statement: never fail to lead. And he's speaking to all the employees, but I thought, I almost think he's talking to me. And he's right. If you think about it, if you're in a leadership role, you can never fail to lead, because there are bad consequences to that. And it is remarkably difficult to do, because there are all days where we're tired. We've got something else going on. And yet, your employees are not necessarily going to know that. Maybe they can't know it. But nonetheless, you've got an obligation to be a leader all the time. And so the concept of concentrated effort and never failing to lead are the two things that are touchstones in my business career.
Yeah, so that tells you, somewhere along the line, Lloyd, you've shared a nugget that there's somebody carrying it around. I don't know if they've told you, but there's somebody where you've had that impact. You know that in your career? I know it's true.
I've said lots of things. God knows what that one is.
but that's part of leadership, and hopefully, if they haven't already, somebody's going to come up to you and tell you that. The same way.
All right, now I'm curious.
Yeah, that's how it goes around in a circle, sort of. And along those lines, as we're talking here, what advice would you give to someone that's new and kind of you kind of see someone starting out the way you did?
You have to approach the job with concentrated effort. If you're lucky like I have been, you'll find a job that immediately clicks. And it's okay that it doesn't, and you need to move on, because there's no point in being miserable in the thing that pays the bills and where you spend most of your waking hours. And so, if you're a young person coming out of college or high school and you're in your first job, it's okay to have made a mistake and decide that this is not where you want to be.
Right.
And once you've decided that, you need to do something about it. And find what you think is going to be the right position for you, and then just go all in.
Decision making isn't a tough one for you, is it?
Well, believe me, there have been some things that I have wrestled with for a long time to figure out what the right answer is. So, I spend quality time on my riding mower, which allows me to do a lot of thinking.
Okay.
Without any interruption, and so that's where I tumble things through in my mind and come up with things. But there's some tricks along the way when you're confronted with a particularly knotty problem that can go either way. Sometimes you can use the device of saying, okay, what's the best outcome? And you can describe that. What's the worst outcome? And you can describe that. And then you have to say, can you live with the worst outcome? And if the answer is no, well, then don't do that. And of course, we're not talking about the 1/1000th of a percent thing going wrong, but something that has a reasonable probability of being an outcome. If you can't live with it, better not do that.
Interesting. Now, you just gave me a little opening to where I kind of wanted to get there. You said you did some thinking on the mower, but I do some of my thinking when I'm walking these two black labs I have. I had to weave it in there for our listeners. Lloyd and I have a good friendship around Labrador Retrievers, so I just wanted to mention your passion for yellow Labradors and maybe a word or two there, because I'm humanizing you here.
Well,
and it's really quite a wonderful thing that we have in our lives.
We have we're on our third yellow lab, Abigail Adams.
Oh.
The previous one, Cleopatra, was with us for 12 years, and prior to that, we had Contessa, who was also with us for 2 years. So their names reflect their personalities. They run the roost. You know that.
Yes.
Your dogs run the roost. Yeah, but they're great. Great pups. Yeah. Love them.
Yeah, something about everybody. Sometimes people have different breeds and so forth. For me, it's been labs all along. It's funny that how you had 3 rounds. I'm the same. Started with a black lab mix named Mick, after you know who, Mick Jagger. And then I had one for 13 and a half years, Eddie, and he was perfect. And now I have 2, which I never did before, Theodore and Miss G, who's a rescue. And it's just the joy of them. But when we get out on a walk around town or whatever, it's like we're a little pack. And I might start a walk worried about, or just like you said, just my mind is like, what am I going to do with this problem or this issue I'm dealing with, work and community? And 45 minutes later, as I'm returning home, or an hour later, half hour, whatever it is, my shoulders are calm, my thoughts are clear. I might even have solved it. Or right. I'm close to, I'm like, here's a couple of steps I can take towards solving it, you know? And so those are, I give them all the credit for that. But anyhow, they're a great distraction. So anyway, I got it in there, so I'm happy. We're going to start to wind down now. So I want to do what I always do with folks and ask you if you have a favorite motto you'd like to share with listeners.
Sure. In change, there's opportunity. It's what you make of the opportunity that matters. And if you're in life, there's going to be a change.
Yes.
And oftentimes, your first reaction is, oh no. But if you stop and think, okay, so here's what has just happened. Here's the way I'm looking at these things. Well, is there opportunity in the change that has just taken place? Whether it's losing a valued employee, without casting aspersions upon them, if you think to yourself, all right, they did a fantastic job. Now, how am I going to improve upon that? And so now you're now embarking on a search where you're going to trade up, and that's better for the organization and so on. And it's the same in whether it's family relationships, or personal relationships, college decisions, wherever it happens to be. You're going to have to face change. And if you think of it as an opportunity and then chart your path, it seems like that's the best way.
That's a really, really good. Thank you for sharing that, Lloyd. And really, we've seen a lot of change in the time Virginia Partners Bank has been around.
You got that right.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to participate in this. I'm a big fan of the Chamber.
Yes.
You're part of the ecosystem that makes the world go round. Advocates for the business of being in business, and I appreciate that. So thank you for all you do.
Oh, thank you, Lloyd, and thank you, Virginia Partners Bank, for being a visionary member of the Fredericksburg Regional Chamber of Commerce. You're one of the great supporting organizations that makes it possible for us to keep going. So what a great partnership we have. I thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've had a great conversation here today on the Leader to Leader podcast. Again, I'm your host, Susan Spears, with the Fredericksburg Regional Chamber in the Commonwealth of Virginia here in the United States. And our guest today was Lloyd Harrison, the CEO of Virginia Partners Bank. If you have not already subscribed to the Chamber's We Are Business podcast, please go ahead and do so. Now you'll know when new episodes are available. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.